Terry, the next topic is the most important topic in the Catholic Church. And it doesn't seem like it's getting any better because the bishops miss it. They're just blind to the solution. Father John Perricone gives 4 simple changes that we can do that would bring a Eucharistic revival instead of these multi-million-dollar programs that benefit us nothing.
Right.
Here's a radical proposal for the USCCB's Eucharistic revival. 4 simple changes could be a game changer completely.
I'm with him.
And so let's hit it. There's a 2020 Pew Research study.
Yep.
And Terry and me, we've shared the study over and over again.
Yep.
That almost 70% of the people that were polled, Catholics, said that they do not believe in the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. This is, and if you just glance at the average parish receiving Holy Communion in most Catholic parishes, you can say, yeah, I can see that. Yep, I can see that. You don't need to be a trained phenomenologist to appreciate the importance of symbolic acts in man's self-disclosure. When we talk about the presence of the Holy Eucharist in America right now, when you look at the average parish, this is a damning sign, Terry, because it's not only the absence of rudimentary piety, but of a withered belief in the doctrine itself.
Yeah.
One flows from the other as certainly as day follows by night. Right, as we say, orthopraxy leads to orthodoxy leads to orthopraxy.
Exactly.
If a Catholic shows as much attention to the Holy Eucharist as he does to collecting his order at Starbucks, something is awry.
When I read that the first time, Jesse, I chuckled too. And you know, Jess, just to make a note, for 45 years, this is my 45th year where I've been active as an evangelist in the Catholic Church. And why do I say that? I ask people, every parish I go to, I will ask people, so tell me what you believe about the Holy Eucharist. And I said this to Jess over the years. Jess, about 90% of the people, anecdotally, that I talk to have no clue. I remember, and I'll just give this story. Jess and I went to Montana in a small parish. See if he can remember this, Jess.
Oh, yeah.
We were there with your wife, and we were doing a parish mission. Mm-hmm. And a guy came up to us after the mission. Jesse just taught on the Holy Eucharist. He's an older guy, and he's in tears. And he goes, Jesse, thank you for reaffirming the belief on the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. Well, for years here, we've had missions, and they consistently don't teach that. And that, it's a symbol. It's not Jesus' real body. And you just said it wasn't, that it was, the perennial teachings of the church. Thank you for coming to Montana to tell us this, because we haven't heard this in years. And you're looking at the dude going, hey, God bless you, bro. I mean, this is the deposit of faith. I'm not going to tell you anything different. Remember that?
Yeah, and the priest there, he was a modernist.
Oh, I won't go into that.
He told us, he was nice though. He was a nice
guy.
He said, by the way, I don't agree with anything that you and Terry are saying this weekend. That. He said, but my parishioners wanted you here.
Yeah.
And these are some of my most faithful parishioners, so that's why you're here. But just so you know, I don't agree with anything you guys are saying today.
Yeah, and I won't go into all the things we went there, but it was one of those memorial days. I actually took a picture. Are you ready, folks? I'll just be honest with you, because we do well even when we deal with modernism.
The American bishops seem to have noticed this alarming anomaly in the past year. Odd that they should have detected this doctrinal collapse so recently, since it's been glaringly evident for over half a century. It's rather like a man being bitten by a shark and only screaming an hour later. Clearly, this crumbling of the central dogma of the Catholic Church had its conspicuous antecedents.
Yes.
Antecedents supported by carefully planned strategies, all of them gestating among the theological grandees for decades. So many now forgotten, laid deep the foundations for the denuded Catholic faith now so ubiquitous. Yeah. To name only a few.
Stay away from this guy, everybody.
Edward Skillebeck. He was a Dominican, and his attenuation of grace through the sacraments. Karl Rahner, another modernist heretic.
Stay away from him.
And his supernatural, existential, to say nothing of his iconoclastic article, How to Receive a Sacrament and Mean It. The whole of the Concilium, these were the liberals right after Vatican II that formed a group called the Concilium, and the Sacramental Theology of the Theological Society of America, 1965.
Yep.
This is hardly an exhaustive list, but it does suggest the formidable momentum that set down the pillars upon which the present crisis rests right now in the Catholic Church.
Jesse, before you continue, at that same year, 1965, Pope Paul VI, during the Second Vatican Council, on the date, I'll give you the date, it was the 3rd of September, 1965, feast day of Pope Pius X, the Pope for the Holy Eucharist. And it was his 3rd year being Pope, and he had to write a document, and I have it in my hands, Mysterium Fidei, which is the mystery of faith. It was all on the Holy Eucharist, reaffirming the transubstantiation and condemning transfinalization, transignification, all this garbage that these guys were coming up with.
These modernists.
Modernists. And Paul VI knew the same thing that we're talking about, that there was going to be some modernists coming out saying, oh, the Vatican II Council said this, which it didn't. Okay, but they went out and proclaimed, and Paul VI said, I'm going to beat you to the punch. I'm going to put out and reaffirm what the church has always taught, those perennial teachings. So thank you, Paul VI, for that. Continue, Jess.
Yeah, we're talking about the fourfold plan that there's a priest from the back east. He said if the bishops did these 4 things,
yes,
the church would be back, running full sheen ahead, as we say here. Yeah, so... let me go right to the important part. It says, so thorough was this transformation of Eucharistic theology that well-meaning Catholics now confidently call the Mass a meal.
Exactly.
And the Holy Eucharist, bread of fellowship.
Give me a break.
Under this logic, it is quite hostile, to say nothing of actionable, to refuse any man or woman access to the Holy Eucharist.
Oh, my God.
Not a few bishops growl at a priest even publicly repeating the traditional requirements for reception of Holy Communion. So very unwelcoming, you see. This alarming doctrinal breakdown entrenched itself so deeply that it even dictated new architectural forms for churches, confirming the Marshall McLuhan principle.
And what is that principle?
The medium is the message.
Exactly.
In other words, give them modernist churches, give them modernist liturgy.
Round table stuff,
Yeah, you'll get modernist Catholics. It's simple. This helpful backdrop brings us back to the bishops. The Pew survey was a bit of cold water splashed in their faces.
You think?
Yeah, or some faces, that something must be done. Alas, now they're launching a 3-year Eucharistic revival culminating in a 2024 Eucharistic Congress. Every Catholic prays that it succeeds. But towards that end, some proposals should be made. At first glance, they may appear radical. Indeed, they are, but only because they stand so starkly against the blighted landscape of current Eucharistic practice. So Terry and me, we're going to go through some of the 4 proposals that may even seem to be antediluvian as to be laughable.
I know.
But this further proves the point that Eucharistic doctrine has become so debased that such things that were quite normal not too long ago today almost seem taboo.
Yeah, it's not brain surgery, Jess.
Words.
Yeah, it's not brain surgery. It's really quite simple. We're going to go through those. Go ahead, Jess.
Well, do the first one.
First one, tabernacles return to the center of every church. It's an interesting how liturgists commandeered this movement of the tabernacle from the center of every church to the side. And some of them, you can't even find them outside. You don't know where they brought our Lord. They appeal to Vatican II. Whenever someone says Vatican II says this, don't believe it. Read the documents.
Right.
They said, we appeal to Vatican II, and they preferred tool and frosting upon the church novelties, and which configure their faith. In point of fact, here's what the 1983 canon law says. Folks, read them this. The tabernacle in which the Eucharist is regularly reserved should be placed in a part of the church that is prominent, not the closet, conspicuous, beautifully decorated, and suitable for prayer. Canon 938.2. Jesse, do we need to say more? I mean, that's so obvious. I'll read the last thing and then we'll get to the second. Only those of ill-disposed agenda would interpret the directive as anything more than a maintenance of status quo of churches before the council, period. Any sidelining of the tabernacle transmits the unquestionable message of sidelining Jesus Christ himself. No amount of theological, liturgical, I call it gymnastics, can conceal this, right? Liturgists may not abide by the incapable laws of natural symbol, but ordinary folks do. See, you know what the difference between a liturgist and a terrorist is? You can negotiate with a terrorist. These liturgist guys, Jesse, they just ram right things through, and it's just wrong. And I think we need to stand up and say, let's bring our Lord back. And I remember in 1976 at the Eucharistic Congress, Bishop Sheen said this, Jess. We're replacing the Blessed Sacrament with a tin god. They put that chair in the center of the church, and that's where the priest sits. He says, get rid of him. Jesus Christ needs to be in the center of the church. Thank you, Bishop Sheen, for clarity. Hey, Jess, we got to take a quick break. We come back. Let's get that second proposal. I know I'm excited, but what more could we not be excited about the Holy Eucharist? The Vatican II Council said it's the source and summit of the Christian life. Let's get it right, man. Wow.